Welcome to the Virtual Coffee Lab. I'm excited to do a full roast today on a new roaster manufactured by Kaleido. It's the M1 Light. My previous video we did a first look, learned about the features, benefits, and what we can expect from this roaster, and today we're going to be putting it to the test. What we learned is that this roaster appears to be a full-featured roaster. Well, in today's video we're going to see what its capabilities are. We're going to learn more about how to use the roaster itself. We'll be setting up Artisan, connecting the roaster, all of that in a pre-roast setup section of this video. And then we'll move on to the roast itself. And we're not going to try to roast some amazing profile because we really don't know how this roaster is going to behave. So we're going to do what I'm going to consider to be kind of a standard first roast goal to see how the machine behaves. And I'm doing a few things here intentionally for us to learn together. And we'll talk about that in the actual roast segment. And then there's going to be a post-roast segment where we take a look at Artisan, we take a look at the roaster, the things that happen with the coffee, the end result of that. And then in our last section, we will have more or less next steps. What are we going to do next? What should I do as somebody that's new to roasting or new to this roaster that will take me to the next level? So we'll get into all of that. There's going to be a lot of information here. I would encourage you to not scrub through the video because this is kind of a building block setup. And that also helps me as far as watch time goes. That would be great. Also, you can always hit the like button. That helps others find this video so they'll be able to see what it's like to do a first roast on a brand new machine. And then ultimately subscribe, and that way you'll get notifications to all the videos that I upload. Kaleido is actually giving away a brand new M1 Light coffee roaster. This is Kaleido USA that's running the promotion, and it's all done through their Facebook page. So I'll have a link in the description, and you have till the end of February before they announce a winner. So I would encourage you to do that. Before we begin the setup with the roaster, we need to talk about the setup for our roasting environment. Safety is foremost. It's really important that we have a organized, clean roasting environment. We don't want to trip over something or have something fall over while we're roasting. We don't want any distractions, and so we need to have a clean and organized roasting space. You'll also notice that I have a fire extinguisher over here in the corner, and I have that next to me with every roasting session that I do. It's really important because roasting fires are possible. I've never had one. I've had some chaff kind of become like smoking embers, but I've never had like a full-blown fire. And then last, we want to be able to have a safe and healthy roasting environment, and that includes good ventilation. I'm roasting in an enclosed room here in the basement, and I want to be sure that I'm not going to be inhaling a bunch of fumes and potentially toxic smoke that is not going to be good for my lungs. So it's really important to have some sort of a ventilation system. Kaleido recommends to have kind of a hood fan setup. And so here we can see I've got a hood fan that is kind of shrouding over the back side of my roaster. I've got vent tubing or vent pipes that have a flexible adjustable elbow that allow me to direct this to any size roaster that I'm going to be using. And then we have a Vevor motor. I'll have a link in the description that you can check that out. And that is basically the fan that powers or draws air outside into the air outside of my basement here. This is going to prevent my roasting environment from getting full of smoke, and this is what Kaleido recommends. So now we want to talk about the pre-roast setup. We're going to be talking about all of the things that we need to do to get this machine ready to start our roast. You need to go to Artisan, and I'll have a link right here on the screen and also in the description. Download the software, go to the download section, and then find the appropriate download for your operating system and install it on the machine. The next step is to connect the roaster to the computer. You'll use a USB connection and plug that in the back of the coffee roaster, and you'll also plug it into your computer. And the next thing you want to do is power on the roaster. The roaster makes 5 beeps and it is powered on, and now you open up Artisan. Artisan doesn't know anything about the roaster that you have, and so this is what you do to set the connection up properly. With Artisan open, you go up to the configuration menu, choose machine. In the list, scroll down in alphabetical order, you'll find Kaleido. Then we need to tell Artisan how we're going to connect to the Kaleido roaster. There's 3 options, and we're going to select serial. Then a pop-up window appears. Artisan needs to know what the total capacity of the Kaleido roaster we're using is. So you'll enter 0.2 and then say OK. 0.2 kilos is 200 grams, and that's the maximum capacity for the Kaleido M1 Light. All right, so now you are brought to the main Artisan screen, and you'll hit the on button, and immediately to the right you should see temperatures appear, and this is your room temperature. This is the ambient temperature that the machine senses right now, and you are connected to the roaster. You can test this by selecting some of the buttons. So for example, you'll see some buttons down at the bottom or the slider to the left, and you'll select some air settings and you'll hear the fan turn on. Bring that back down to 0, go to the drum and select 50 or 60 or 70 on the drum, and you'll hear the drum begin to turn. It is very quiet, but you'll hear it actually responding to the commands that you're sending from Artisan to the roaster itself. Okay, well, this is all great. So we have Artisan installed, we have the machine connected, and now we're ready to do the setup for our first roast. This is something that I can't emphasize more to you. We're not here trying to come up with some amazing profile right now. We have no idea how this machine is going to respond or behave, and so we have to guess. We have to guess how much power to use, we have to guess a charge temperature, our air settings, all of that. And for right now, I'm just going to make this simple for you, and I'm going to tell you what to start with, and then you're going to see what happens on my roaster in this roast. The most important thing you should keep in mind is my roaster temperatures and what you see on the graph might be a little different than yours. So I would encourage you to do this setup, and if you find that your results are a little different, you're going to need to make some adjustments to your initial charge temperature or your power setting or what have you, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So we're going to set this up now, and then we're going to be talking about the controls and how we're going to use those controls. You've got the slider area to the left and the buttons down below. You can use either, whatever you're most comfortable with. Either way, the first thing you need to do is you need to set your air to 25. This is not a really high setting and it's not a really low setting. It's just an average air setting that's going to allow us to be able to move smoke out of the roaster and allow us to focus on some more important things right now with our roast. Next, we're going to set the SV, the set value, to 165 Celsius. If you've changed your roaster to be configured for Fahrenheit, then you should do the calculation on that. But ultimately, 165 C is what the SV value should be set at. This is the temperature that the roaster is going to warm up to and idle at until we make changes to this set value. So for the first step of the pre-roast, the set value is used to set our starting temperature of our roast. Next is the drum itself. We're going to set the drum speed to 90. I know it seems high, but we're roasting at close to full capacity. We're going to be roasting 180 grams of coffee, and then we'll get into all of the details about the coffee in a second. Next is the sequence to start preheating your roaster. The preheating process is going to take about 15 or 20 minutes. The machine will warm up much quicker than that, but we want a stable roasting environment. We'll talk about that more in just a second. Now you go down to the buttons and you select auto burner and then start heating. Immediately to the left on the slider, you'll see your burner go to 100%. The roaster is now heating itself up using its carbon fiber heating element, And again, this is going to heat up quickly. You can look down in your sight glass where you can see the orange light inside start to glow. Be sure your chaff collector drawer is clear and pushed in, and be sure that the bean chute door is completely closed and secured. There should be nothing in the drum, and here a nice quiet roaster operating preheating. You can turn on your vent system if you have the VVOR system or some sort of a way to start drawing air so that the roaster will exhaust out through that hood fan or whatever ventilation system you have. And now we wait. We wait for about 15 or 20 minutes. Why do we wait 15 or 20 minutes if the roaster can warm up and reach our starting temperature in 7 or 8 or 9 minutes? Why would we want to do that? And the reason why is because we want to make sure all of the metal on the machine is hot. We want to create the most stable roasting environment we can, and that's why we wait about 15 or 20 minutes before we do our first roast. During this time, the machine will reach its temperature and it's going to idle. Now, after about 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to be ready to roast, and that's where it leads us to our actual roast segment, and that's where we'll begin here next. Our goal is to roast a nice Guatemalan Huehue coffee, 180 grams, to a solid medium roast. I'm choosing medium to start out because this falls somewhere in between a darker roast and a lighter roast, and a lot of people roast medium. And this is also going to give us an idea how the power settings we use falls into a ending roast level and temperature. And we'll get into that when we talk about the post-roast section. Now, our roasting goals are about a 5-minute dry, and then first crack is going to be between 8 and 8:30 on the timeline. So that's about 3 to 3.5 minutes in the browning phase. And then we're going to do 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes for development. And this is kind of our original plan, just to kind of see how things play here. So the next thing we want to do is make sure we've weighed out 180 grams of green coffee. I'm not putting the beans in the hopper until I'm ready to roast. The roasting table is clear, nothing's in the way, it's safe to start our roast, and we're going to hit the start button on Artisan at the top of the Artisan screen. And I want you to look and see what's happening here. Immediately you're going to see the power fluctuating up and down on the graph. And this is the machine automatically maintaining your starting temperature, your charge temperature, and it's idling there, and it's going to do anything that it can within its power to stay on track, to stay at that temperature. You'll also notice a blue line and a red line moving horizontally across the screen. The red line is your bean temperature, and the blue line is your environmental temperature, the exhaust temperature. The bean temperature is what Artisan is going to be displaying over on the right in the red box, and you can see it there, as well as below where you see a red triangle and the letters BT. This is your delta bean temperature. This is your rate of rise number at any given moment. We're also going to be seeing the environmental temperature display its temperatures. We'll see that in the blue box over to the right, and then down below that is the delta environmental temperature, and you'll see that changes along the way in the roast. We're not going to focus as much on the delta environmental temperature here. We're going to be focusing on the rate of rise, which is the delta bean temperature, as well as our temperatures while we roast. All right, so how do we know we have a stable roasting environment? You'll notice that the ET and the BT lines on the graph are moving in the same direction horizontally, and they're not going up or down. They're fairly consistently flat going across the screen. All right, let's familiarize ourselves with the Artisan graph itself. First, we have the timeline. The timeline is on the bottom of the graph, starts at 0 and goes to 10. As the roast progresses, the roasting timeline may expand, and you'll see that happen here in this roast. But for now, it's displaying 10 minutes, and it will stay in that timeline until we need more time, and then Artisan will automatically add more time. the temperature graph on the left going up next to the SV. You see it there, 0, 50, 100, 150. Those are our temperatures. So as we look at the blue and the red line horizontally move across the screen, if you look, you can see the temperature of 163 C correlates with the temperature graph that you see there on the left side of the graph itself. On the right side of the graph, you see from the bottom up 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. That is our rate of rise plotting on the graph, and you will follow the rate of rise to the right wherever it's at, and you'll look and you'll see where that is on your graph. Well, if it's displaying digitally, why do we need to have these numbers here? Because we're going to be looking at trends. We're going to be looking at not just a fixed number, but we're going to be looking at basically a direction that the roast is heading within the timeline, and you need to have all of that. We're also going to be focusing on observing the roast. We're going to be talking about event times, the beans changing in the way that they're changing, so we're going to be using our senses, and we're going to smell, we're going to visually see a change in the beans. We're going to watch them tumble through the sight glass. We're going to use the trier. We're going to smell. So during the roast, sensory is a primary focus, as well as what's happening here on the screen. So we're going to be multitasking while we roast. We're going to be watching the timeline, watching the roast behavior. We're going to be seeing some things happen with our roast. And because we're making very few changes, I'm hoping that you'll be able to see some things that naturally occur so that when you do your first roast, you're not going to freak out and start making a bunch of changes to your roaster, because you know that these are expected behaviors that happen on every roast. And then ultimately, we're going to be just watching all of the different things, the information that Artisan provides to us during the roast, including our predicted times in the various phases. We're going to see our events being marked on the timeline. We're going to be watching our bean temperature climb, as in the roasting curve, and we're going to see what that shape looks like. And again, we're going to be seeing our rate of rise with the goal of having a consistently declining rate of rise. It's not going to be perfect, and there are going to be dips and flicks, and at the end, we'll probably see some really interesting things happen as well. Okay, so these are all the things that we're going to be aware of. We're ready to charge the roaster. We've got our coffee ready here, our green coffee beans, and I'm going to fill the hopper. Probably I'm going to pour in about 3/4 of the beans from my cup into the hopper. Now, this is one of the things about this machine that I'm not really excited about. It's one of its weaknesses. Every roasting machine has its weaknesses, and this one is that the hopper itself is not really set up for full capacity. It can't really hold 200 grams of beans well. I'll probably make some sort of modification to be able to compensate for that. It's not a big deal, but this is the sequence that I'm doing when I start my roast. I'm ready to charge the roaster. I pour 3/4 of the beans into the hopper, and then on Artisan, I click charge. I pull open the hopper chute, and I take the remaining beans and pour those in, because the other beans have already started shooting in and the roast has begun. I close the hopper once I know all of the beans are inside the roaster, put the cup out of the way, click manual burner down on the buttons down on the bottom, and then I'm going to change my burner power from 100% to 70%. And then I'm going to sit back and observe for a minute. And here's what's happening. Immediately, you can see that the red line, the bean temperature, is plummeting, and it's going to drop for about a minute or so, probably a little bit less, and then it's going to start to curve around and head upward in the right direction. And we're going to see our temperatures increasing. When it starts to curve and move upward, you're going to see TP, that's the turning point event. Right now, that's just helpful information, and my turning point is 73 with a time of 51 seconds. The blue line you should see slowly climbing up to the right, and this is telling us that our environmental temperature is getting hot as well. This is exactly what we want to have happen. All right, so now we're using our senses. This is something that you should be paying attention to. The machine is doing what it's supposed to do, and now you're to do what you're supposed to do, and that's to pay attention to the coffee. I mistakenly hit a button here, so you're going to see CE, that's cool end. That's not going to have any impact on our roast, and then I'll get rid of that a little later here in the roast, but don't pay any attention to that. Sorry about that. This is all part of using a new roaster. I clicked the wrong button. Take a look at the beans through the sight glass, and you'll see bean movement. That's a good thing. We always want to have good bean movement. As soon as turning point finished, immediately a red line from the bottom darts up, and this is our rate of rise. And the rate of rise is basically our momentum. It's like a hammer throw in the Olympics, where the Olympian spins around in a circle with this ball and chain and then launches it across a field, and we've got this happening, this upward climb with all that momentum from the athlete. And that's what's happening here. Because of our temperatures, we have this really fast launch that is launching our roast upward, and you're now seeing it start to turn, get wiggly, and start to head in a downward direction. This is totally normal. We haven't made any power changes. This is something that happens with every roast. Now, we're at 70% power, and so you're going to see that there will be a downward trend as we move down towards the dry vent, and that's okay. Let's pull the trier out, take a look at the coffee again, and you'll notice that it is paling. The coffee is starting to lighten up, get a little brighter rather than that darker green, and this is letting us know that the heat is having an effect on the coffee beans. This is all great. This is all according to plan. Okay, so up in the upper right section, you're seeing the artisan's prediction of when we're going to arrive at the dry event. Well, how does it know that? Well, Artisan basically is using a temperature, a set temperature, as our estimate for what dry end is. It's not going to do anything. It's just a reference point for us, and it looks like we're going to be getting close to dry end at around 5 minutes. But when you're at the top of this rate of rise hump, it seems like you're going to be getting there way too fast, and the rookie roaster, first-time roaster, is going to start to turn their power down because they think they're moving too quickly. The beans are definitely starting to change color, and we are looking like we're going to be arriving pretty close at the 5-minute mark for our roast. I'm going to make my first power adjustment, and I'm going to go from 70 to 50. Now we are really close. I'm looking to make sure there's no green in the coffee. We're really, really close, about another 10 or 15 seconds, I think, and then we're going to go ahead and call this. I'm smelling, and originally I was smelling kind of grass and then hay, and now we're really close to yellow, and I'm smelling kind of a yeasty smell, and here we are definitely yellow right now, and so I'm going to go ahead and mark the dry end event. We hit dry end on the Artisan buttons on that top row, and you can see it display here on my graph. We reached dry end at 156 degrees. Artisan might be set at like 151 C, something to that effect. We are seeing the rate of rise come down. It is squiggly. This is totally normal. We have our rate of rise is very sensitive, and it's showing us every little reaction that happens when the beans are hitting the probe inside the machine. It's not a big deal. We need to be focusing on trends, and we'll be talking about trends here towards the end of the roast. Look through the sight glass, and you can clearly see that the coffee is no longer green. It's actually yellow, and it's starting quickly to turn brown. Now, we're going to be making another power setting change here shortly, but I want you to see what's happening to the rate of rise. It is dropped down quickly, and now it's moved back up, and this is normal behavior where we're seeing changes that without us making a bunch of changes with our controls. And that's because the roasting environment is changing as we move along. How is it changing, Mike? We haven't made any power changes. The air is fixed. Well, the beans are losing moisture, and the beans are changing, and they're influencing what we see here on this graph. Because more moisture is leaving the beans, we need less power to be able to continue to have that red line our bean temperature increasing. Now, let's take a look here for just a second. And I mentioned trends. I want you to see the trend from the peak ROR at the top all the way to the dry vent. And you'll see that there's some ups and downs, but the trend is a downward trend. This is a good thing. We are starting dry end. I think we started dry end around 15 for our rate of rise. How do I know that? I'm looking at the dry end event marked here on the bean temperature line, this curve, and then I go straight across, and it's like 17, I think, is where we're at. By the way, I'm looking at the beans here. Now they're brown. The flavor development is taking place during this time, and we want to make sure that we don't rush this, and that's why I dropped my temperature the first time, so that we would have at least 3 minutes, between 3 and 3.5 minutes, in this flavor development phase, some people call the Maillard phase, that are taking place. Okay, so now we're getting really close. We're probably about, looking at the color and smelling, we're probably about 45 seconds away, 30 seconds away from first crack. And I'm looking also at our temperature progression. We're looking at around probably 90 to 195 degrees, somewhere in that range. I'm expecting first crack to take place on this roaster. Look at the trend here, as you can see, and our rate of rise now, if we look across, is like around 8. And at dry end, we were at 17. So we have a lower rate of rise number. That means our rate of rise is our speed of our roast. Our speed has slowed down. And here we go. First crack is marked at 8 minutes and 42 seconds at 193 C, 993.5 C. So now first crack is started. I've already made my second power adjustment down to 30. And we're not going to change that at all the rest of the roast. We're going to let this go for the rest of the roast at 30. And I want you to see what's happening. But I want to talk about trends here for a second. Look at the trend between dry end and first crack. There is a downward trend. Are there dips and flicks? Yes, there are some dips and flicks. Right now, that's fine. We're not going to focus on that. As a matter of fact, right now, we're like almost crashing in our roast, and we've probably got another minute left before we're going to drop this coffee. Take a look up at the top, and you'll see that we're at we're at 10% development, but I'm really looking for at least 2 minutes, or as long as 2.5 minutes of development. If my temperature increases were really high, like up at 10, that's 10 degrees a minute increase, then that would mean that when I would end my roast, I'd be at 203 for a 1 minute. And if I want 2 minutes development, that's 20 degrees, that's 213. We're gonna have some really dark coffee. And our goal is a medium roast. So we wanna have lower rate of rise in this development phase. But here, we're just watching to see how the roaster performs. And notice how it went down, but then it's starting to climb. Again, the beans have lost moisture and less power is needed, so we're actually seeing the temperatures climb. And if we were to make some improvements to this roast, we would make some power changes. Okay, it's 10 minutes and 50 seconds, and we are like any second here. I'm smelling it. It smells really good. I can smell that a lot of the acidity is now tamed down. The color looks really good, exactly where I wanted it. It looks like a solid medium. And I'm hearing just a few cracks still continuing, and I'm getting ready to call it. Here it is. We're dropping the coffee at 11 minutes and 9 seconds. Wow. Well, that is great. 22% development, that's okay. And we ended our roast with a 203 degrees Celsius ending temperature. And you can see that I opened the chute, the coffee dropped out. When I hit the drop button, the fan automatically turns on. So this is really important because we want to have the beans cool as soon as possible. Air is being pulled down through the top of the bean mass, and it's being drawn out through the dual electric fans that are part of the roasting system. It's important to make sure that the bean tray is pushed against the fans so there's no gap, so we get maximum draw of cool air through the beans. All right, well, the roast is finished. The next thing I want to do is hit the off button to stop recording the roasting activity. And once we do that, the graph is going to show up with all of our details. The first thing we want to do is we want to save this file. So you'll go to File, Save As, and we're going to save our roasting log. And I use a certain type of naming convention that I want to share with you. And you can call this whatever you want to call. You can call this test roast if you want. But the first characters you see are the date. By default, Artisan includes the date of this roast, and then there's some other unique identifiers that are appended on, so every roast is unique. I remove those and I leave the date, and then I add my own unique identifiers. And here's my pattern. Because I'm roasting with a variety of different roasters, I've now started to identify the roaster that I'm using. So this is the M1, and then the next is the charge weight in grams. So we are roasting 180 grams of this Guatemalan Huehue coffee. The next set of numbers is the charge temperature, 165 C, and then the next set of numbers is the ending temperature, 203 C. And the reason why I name it like this is because I can look through all of my roasts in a single file folder on my computer. I include the name of the coffee usually, but I didn't here in this test roast. But I include the roaster, the name of the coffee, and all of these temperatures. And that way I've got a quick reference and I can open up a roast profile and look at the notes and all of the comparisons, all the details that I used. The coffee has had a chance to cool. It's been a couple of minutes now. Next, it's time to weigh out the coffee and see how much weight loss we have with these roasted beans. We're going to go to the Artisan menu and choose Roast, and then Properties, and a dialog box opens up, and it should open up to the default sub-tab for Properties itself. This is where we're going to add the green weight and the roasted weight of this coffee, and it's going to show us a development percentage. And roasted, it weighs 153.1 grams. So we're going to enter our starting weight where it says green, and that's 180, and then the roasted weight of 153.1. And then when we click out into another box, Artisan calculates the weight loss, and in our case, it's 14.9%. So we basically have a 15% weight loss. The beans look nicely roasted, and they look to be a really solid medium, and the weight loss also confirms that. So we accomplished the roast level, and I'm happy with the result of us getting there. We're going to make some changes to the roast in the future, but right now I want to talk about the things that we use and observe as far as information goes in the post-roast. The bean texture, the bean color, and the roast level are things that we just looked at here, and this indicates a nice solid medium. We hit our target. Also, as far as Artisan goes, we can see that we got to dry in 5 minutes and 6 seconds. This is very close to where we wanted to be. If I would have gotten to dry at 4:30 and my goal was 5 minutes, then I would either lower my charge temperature or I would lower my power setting. I would probably start with lowering my charge temperature, probably 5 degrees or 7 degrees, and then that would get us much closer to the 5-minute mark. This is what I'm talking about for our very first roast. This is an example of, okay, did I miss the mark here? Did I miss my target event times? And what do I need to do to get to those times? This is what we have to do. We have to have a first roast to tell us what we need to change to kind of tweak and tune ourselves so that we can then have a meet our goal. And this is all part of learning to use the controls, getting comfortable with them, understanding our roasting temperatures and getting comfortable with them. And this is how we learn, especially with a brand new roaster. The comments area is a time for discussion. So if you have questions about what I covered, share those in the comments and I'll do my best to answer those. As far as Kaleido's machine and what do I think about what happened here, I think that this machine did everything that it promised to do. I had complete control over the roast, and I am getting good connectivity with Artisan, I'm getting good information, and now it's just time for me to have my honeymoon phase with this roaster and to get to know it better and to get better, even a better roast. Is this coffee going to taste good or bad? This is going to taste good. This is going to be decent coffee to drink. Is it going to be the best coffee you've had? It might be the best coffee you've had at this point, and congratulations, that's awesome. But we can do better than this, and it will make some improvements. But ultimately, the three things that I've talked about on this channel that really impact what we taste, first and foremost is how dark, or the color of the coffee itself. A second is how much development time you have roasting this coffee and balancing out roast. And then third, how much time it took you to get the first crack. These are things we're going to do for next steps. We're going to talk about fine tuning, we're going to talk about putting together a roasting plan, and then ultimately about how we can make this coffee better. Kaleido is giving away a brand new M1 Light coffee roaster to somebody here in my audience. All you need to do is go to the description of this video, click on the link and fill out the form or answer a couple of questions, and you'll be registered to win this coffee roaster. Thank you for joining me today here at the Virtual Coffee Lab, and I hope you have a great week roasting. We'll see you next time. Take care.